Delegate Marcus Simon. He is from the 53rd District, that is Falls Church, part of Fairfax County. Hey, Delegate Simon, great to have you with us.
Hey, John, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Hey, I want to start with ABC. Now, Virginia has this ABC organization. As you know, we're one of the only states, I think maybe there's 3 or 4 in the continental United States now, where liquor is sold through state-sponsored stores. But then, Delegate Simon, as you know, ABC also has a whole law enforcement arm. They're independent. Their objective is to, stop the sale of underage drinking and other things. But as some have pointed out, they're really going over the top. Now, we have the incident a week ago at the University of Virginia. Some other things going on. When are we going to finally rein ABC in?
You know, I hope that it's soon. I hope that it's sooner rather than later. There seems to be some momentum on both sides of the aisle in the General Assembly to finally do something about this and rein them in. There was a Washington Post story just, I think, the other day that says they have that enforcement piece, it seems to me and to many of my colleagues, completely backwards. We think of the enforcement branch of the ABC as preventing stores and places that sell liquor from selling it to underage people just to get the extra money. So somebody, maybe you send in a 19-year-old undercover agent to try and buy beer, nobody cards him. You ding the store for that. You say, hey, you guys need to be tightening up your procedures. You need to stop doing that. It turns out more than half of their arrests have nothing to do with that kind of enforcement. They're more often going after the underage drinkers themselves. And that was never, to my understanding, the point of what law enforcement ought to be doing. They ought to be making sure that people that are selling are licensed to sell, they're selling it to the right folks, but not going after the consumers. So something seems to happen when you give these guys these police powers, that there's a mission creep that starts to happen, and they have this authority, and they want to use it, and I think it's, again, time to rein that in.
Well, sure it is, and this has been tried for some time. As you know, your Senate colleague, Cray Dees, for some time has been trying to put them under the state police or just basically rein them in. But, you have the incident 12 months ago with the young lady, Miss Daly, that was coming out buying basically a box of bubble water. They thought it was beer. They drew a firearm on her, terrified her, surrounded her vehicle. Now we have this incident outside of a bar in UVA where a young man basically gets his head beat in. So what's happening, as you pointed out, is ABC officers are now going after the underage potential drinkers instead of those selling them the alcohol. It's kind of like when you go, instead of going after the prostitutes, you go after those being serviced by them. It's kind of stupid. But in this instance, we're talking about underage. And, Delegate Simon, the reality of it is, we could sit there and say, well, if you're 20 years old, you're 19, you shouldn't go to a bar. I mean, come on. I mean, this has been happening forever. When I grew up, the drinking age was not 21, it was 18. So the young man tries to get in the bar, they tag him, they throw him out, and then he ends up with his head beat in on the street. At what point does the General Assembly say, we've had enough?
Yeah, no, then it's time. It's definitely time. As you said, what happened here, too, is there was really, as far as I can tell, no real crime committed until the encounter with the police. So this crime only happened because, everything he's charged with, I'm not to say that he committed a crime. I know he needs his day in court. But even the allegations that I've read about all have to do with his interaction with the police after they said to him, hey, looks like you just got turned away from a bar. We think you might have a fake ID. Come talk to us. He said, hey, buzz off. I don't want to talk to you. I haven't done anything wrong. So the crime became the interaction. And that's, again, one of the problems that I asked Secretary Moran to help us address. When you have uniformed police standing around with nothing to do, they're going to find ways to justify their existence, and that's going to lead to more of these confrontations that don't need to happen. And then also this idea that you can use this level of force for, what is essentially a victimless crime, even if he had committed it, even if he had been drinking. there's no harm. He's not like a fleeing felon. It's not like he's a bank robber who's off and is likely to cause harm to somebody else. So the amount of force that was involved to effectuate an arrest for a crime that was, like you said, barely a crime, and something that many of us have probably done, it just seemed really out of proportion. So I think that it's time. I've got a meeting coming up in the next couple of weeks with Secretary Moran and senior ABC staff to look at this problem. But I think, in addition, the governors asked them to be retrained. Right now, the statute gives them this authority. He wants them to be retrained in the use of force, and interacting with young people and cultural sensitivity, just so that they have a better sort of community relations space. But I think ultimately, you've got to take away the badges and the guns, put that role with police that are already trained to do that as part of what they do, and let the community make the decision as to which laws they think need the most aggressive enforcement, not an unelected authority in Richmond.
Absolutely. Now, why don't we just get rid of the whole ABC? Why is the government of Virginia even in the business of managing alcohol?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, this is sort of a holdover from Prohibition, which has been nearly 100 years since that's gone the way of the dodo, as they say, Prohibition. Right. And yet we sort of cling to this notion that alcohol is a terrible scourge to society, and we sort of have a Women's Temperance Association view of it in some quarters. I don't know that it's necessary. I mean, other than the revenue aspect of it, I mean, it looks like the last time we talked about doing away with ABC, at least as far as liquor stores went, it was motivated mostly by an opportunity to make some money, and nobody's really looked at that underlying reason for its existence, and has it outlived its usefulness as an agency in Virginia. It seems like most other states have figured out other ways to keep their liquor laws enforced, to keep drunk driving and underage drinking under control without creating a whole government bureaucracy to do it. So I think that the time is probably right to have that discussion here in Virginia as well.
Let me just ask you straight out, Delegate Simon, are you concerned about just this, what I'm going to call the trickle-down erosion of civil liberties in Virginia?
Yes, absolutely. We have so many police agencies in Virginia looking for things to do, looking for their mission becomes more important than anything else, including people's individual liberty, it seems sometimes. And so we need to look at the number of agencies, that government agencies that exist to do certain things, and ask ourselves, how important is it that we give them a special police force to go around and enforce their mission? And like I said, it's a sort of mission creep that continues to happen. I think a 19-year-old or 20-year-old ought to be able to walk around in Charlottesville on St. Patrick's Day without having to be, concerned that they're going to be, approached by uniform officers and sort of said, "Hey, show me your papers, right. Show me your ID, prove who you are, who you say you are."
I think that's absolutely it. I think we've certainly in a lot of these issues gone over the top. Democratic Delegate Marcus Simon, 53rd, that's Falls Church, part of Fairfax. All right, Delegate Simon, we've been working on this ethics legislation in Virginia for a very long time. We're in a post-McDonnell world. Now Terry McAuliffe is going to send amendments to the ethics bill that was finally tossed up there. What do you think?
I actually am a big fan of the amendments that he's proposed. A number of those are very similar to amendments that my colleagues and I asked him to make. We wrote a letter about March 3rd, right after the general session, saying, hey, upon further review, as it were, there's a number of things that I think in the hurry to get ethics done were missed or may have been unintended consequences. So I think a $100 aggregate cap is appropriate. I don't think I need to be able to take $99 from the same lobbyist every day over and over again. I don't think most of my constituents expect me to be doing that. I think that the restriction on travel, at least making it disclosed so that I can't have a lobbyist come to bring a limo to my house and have me ferried up and down 95 in a limousine. If I'm doing that, I think my constituents would want to know about it. And so he requires that to be disclosed if it's going to happen. Which should discourage it from happening. So I think that the amendments he's proposed are going to tighten this up, make it a much better bill than what he got on his desk a few weeks ago. And I think that it's a good start. Again, it's still not perfect. There's some issues that this bill won't address, but I like what the governor suggested.
Delegate Simon, when you guys reconvene on April 15th, what is your number one objective? Is there something that you want to override? Is there something that you want to sustain? What is it?
I think the ethics bill is probably, again, making sure we get that right was one of my highest priorities, and I think that the governor's done that. So I hope that we'll accept his amendments. I mean, if we don't, it puts him in a difficult position, because if those amendments are rejected, he's either got to sign what he said now is a flawed bill or veto it altogether, and then we've got to face the electorate in November saying, well, we couldn't get our act together on some common sense ethics reforms. So that'll be one of the highest priorities. The other bills, none of them really jump out at me as, the world will end if we can't sustain those vetoes for the most part. I am a big proponent of gun violence prevention. I am a supporter of the state police. I mean, I support them on most of the issues that they ask for. So one of the ones that I'll be watching is this bill that forbids them from sharing information about concealed weapons permit holders with other jurisdictions. I think we want to continue to maintain reciprocity between police departments so they have as much information as they can get when they effectuate an arrest for somebody who's out of state.
Delegate Simon, what's the argument in favor of that? I mean, it just seems even for Second Amendment advocates like me, it seems, okay, reciprocity makes sense. What's the arguments the other way?
Well, the argument the other way is that the Maryland State Police in particular, there was a belief that they were using the information they were receiving from Virginia to target Virginia concealed weapons permit holders and entrap them. So you'd run a license plate for apparently no reason, see that somebody was a concealed weapons permit holder, suspect that in Maryland that concealed weapons permit probably wasn't valid. You pull them over, and then you get an arrest for illegal possession of a weapon in Maryland. So that's really the sort of very narrow activity that they were trying to, I believe, the folks that proposed the bill are trying to stop. And while I understand the desire to stop that if it's going on, I don't know that this is the best way to accomplish that.
Better way to do that, because that is a real reason, and there's many people who said it actually has happened to them, or they surmise it has.
Right, and I think hopefully, I would think we could negotiate something with Maryland or get some sort of memorandum of understanding or something, other than cutting off all of our information to every state about concealed weapons permit holders, again, which may lead them to stop sharing that information with us and ends up putting our officers potentially at risk if they effectuate a traffic stop and aren't able to gather all the information they need about the people in that car.
All right, I think that makes sense. We're out of time. Democratic Delegate Marcus Simon for being with us. He represents the 53rd District, that is Falls Church, and part of Fairfax County. And we'll be, by the way, we will be live in Fairfax County on Wednesday at Chap Peterson's re-election headquarters there in his law office in Fairfax. If you can stop by, Delegate. Love to have you on again.
I'd love to see you.